First tonight, aid is reported to still be failing to reach those most in need in Gaza, despite the increased volumes of trucks. Correspondents say 95% of the aid is being looted by gangs operating in the increasingly lawless Palestinian territory. Humanitarian groups have warned that this week is crucial if thousands are to be saved from starvation. Some 200 truckloads of aid have gone in and about 20 pallets of supplies have been airdropped, and that remains pitifully low. The UN says big steps still need to be taken, including opening up all the crossings into Gaza and more safe routes in the Strip for more convoys to move around. Meanwhile, the Israeli military is continuing its offensive in Gaza with more deadly attacks today. Gaza's health ministry says the number of people killed in Israeli strikes since October 2023 has now surpassed 60,000, though other assessments have a much higher total.
We're only 2 days into the operation, but for the time being, there are no signs of improvement on the ground. Aid agencies say that the food trucks continue to be looted by crowds. The World Food Program, for instance, says none of its trucks were able to make it to its own warehouses. Officials say the situation can only improve once there are regular deliveries in large quantities.
The massacres and the engineered starvation by Israel must be brought to an immediate end. We all must act to reunify Gaza and the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, with no occupation, no siege, no settlements, no forcible displacement, and no annexation, and to rebuild Gaza with and for our people. In the occupation, achieve Palestinian independence, and implement the two-state solution with Palestine and Israel living side by side in peace and security.
Well, amid the suffering and the ongoing conflict, one civil society group of Palestinians called Gaza's Roots Initiative has been working to feed displaced families across several areas of Gaza. Their co-organizer, Dalia Attoui, joins me now on the line from Valencia in Spain. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. And the US President Donald Trump has been speaking of real starvation in Gaza, contradicting earlier remarks made by the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who dismissed fears of hunger as Hamas propaganda. What's the latest that you're hearing out of Gaza? I understand you've got a team working there.
Thank you so much for having me, Charles, and your entire team at Arise News. I will offer as much transparency as possible without putting anyone at risk, because I don't want more people to be targeted and killed on the ground, which has happened before. So our initiative was born in the beginning of the genocide. My friend Tariq Hajjaj, who's a journalist born and raised in Gaza, and I were working on fundraising and meal distributions through Takiyat, which are the communal kitchens that you see a lot on social media, where people line up to go get the food that is available on the market. So we've been working a lot on grocery deliveries as well, and we have partnered all across the Strip. We partner with restaurants that serve hearty meals with proteins. We started working with other mutual aid groups on the ground as well. So these are all propaganda, obviously, that we work on countering and making sure that we're keeping our people fed. One of the biggest challenge right now is that what is raised in general and sent into the Gaza Strip has to be raised twice, because we're dealing with a cash commission that has reached about 50%.
So, I mean, what's your current assessment of the risk of famine in Gaza? I mean, we saw a UN group today saying that basically the Gaza Strip is on the threshold of famine. What are the thresholds you think that need to be met for there to be that conclusion that there is famine there?
I think we need to address as first, the language that's being used. This is not a famine. This is forced starvation. The serious attack on our children through malnutrition and forced starvation is a genocidal strategy towards the erasure of the existence of our people in Gaza and the rest of Palestine, because it's happening everywhere with the annexation of the West Bank and so on. So our future generation is right now being robbed of their right to life and proper care, while the ones who will be lucky enough to survive will be robbed of their right to health and their right to a future. So this is physical and psychological warfare, and we've all heard about what happened a couple weeks ago when the occupation allowed bags of flour entering through other crossings other than the Rafah one, that were found to be poisoned and drugged with oxycodone and other substances. So again, this is a deliberate tactic of genocide against our people in order to humiliate the population and force our people to accept whatever is given to them in the desperation for sustenance. So hunger is being weaponized in order to weaken and annihilate an entire population here. This is, again, forcible starvation. Everyone in Gaza is in need of help, but if you look at the most vulnerable people within everyone's vulnerability, we have the disabled, we have the ill, we have our elders, we have the kids, and so on. And they're all the Zionist project's easiest target. So what we're witnessing truly right now is the final solution in action, and a world that is actively failing in its moral and human responsibility to make sure that this nightmare ends. So I think that the importance of language and insisting on calling it what it is resides in our responsibility as the international community and human beings living on this earth altogether.
Well, I mean, the Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Saar said just a few hours ago that Israel was not to blame for the tough conditions in Gaza. He said Hamas was to blame for the suffering in Gaza and for the continuation of this war. What's your reaction to that?
I will not speak politically about political views for our group, because that's not what we're here to do, honestly. To each their own opinion. But I will say that a couple months ago, maybe, it was addressed that and addressed by Netanyahu himself that he was arming gangs in Gaza to terrorize the people there, and putting this on Hamas, on what the resistance is doing, on everybody else living there. People are just people. Are people just human beings? Nobody deserves to be bombed. Nobody deserves to be starved. So the responsibility, again, is on so-called Israel. They have been arming these gangs, and they have been stealing aid, and they have been using this as propaganda to keep doing what they're doing right now.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your organization, Gaza's Roots Initiative. I know you mentioned that you obviously try to get food into Gaza, but it's also about resource mobilization for the people of Gaza, isn't it?
So the current situation in Gaza right now is way worse than what is being shown, obviously, because most journalists are not allowed to enter the strip to report properly, and our journalists are starving to death. Some areas are fully isolated, while others are closer to markets and grassroots groups feeding the people doing what we do. Meaning that when we hear Palestinians in Gaza saying, we have nothing to eat, and others saying, aid saved my life, both realities are true, which is why our team works on connecting with as many families as possible to deliver them enough food for their families and avoid them going to the GHP Western programs, the humanitarian programs set up by the West that are nothing other but like slaughterhouses, because people get killed there and shot at every day, just trying to get flour to make bread for their kids.
Well, let me just turn briefly. I know you said you didn't want to really get political, but we've got to kind of look at solutions. So let's turn to this move by France and Saudi Arabia, which is currently taking place in New York at the UN there, to build support for the recognition of a Palestinian state and a two-state solution. I mean, do you think this conference should be taking place at this time?
I think that these governments have betrayed us. Listen, as a Palestinian myself, they have betrayed us, and they have waited way too long to call it what it is, to do something about it, and to recognize us as a state, as a people that has right to dignity, and all of that. I think this conference should have taken place 2 years ago. And I think that everything that's happening should have been stopped 2 years ago. I think that people should have done something about it and not let it get to that point, because everybody is acting shocked whenever they receive those news. But everybody has that responsibility to stand up and do something, and that includes those governments in question. That's pretty much my opinion about it. I think that it is really disrespectful to talk about a two-state solution when us Palestinians have been so open to it for decades before we started getting treated the way we started getting treated. I'm banned from entering my own city. I can't go home. And I know a lot of people who go through this as well constantly. So there's not one Palestinian reality. There are multiple Palestinian realities. There are multiple stories of exile. And I don't think that the idea of a two-state solution is something that is viable right now.
Okay, on that note, I want to thank you very much indeed. We really appreciate your taking the time to talk to us and to give us your assessment of what's going on in Gaza, and also tell us a bit about your group. Dalia Attoui was talking to me on the line there from Valencia in Spain.